So even though we're only a short way into Marvel Phase 5, Marvel fans across the world are already thinking ahead about what is to come in Marvel Phase 6. Now, back in 2022, we did get a brief look into the future of the MCU and a brief look into Phase 6, with 3 movies announced that are going to be part of that 6th phase, those being the Fantastic Four film, and Avengers Kang Dynasty, and Avengers Secret Wars. But there's still 6 unannounced movies to be releasing in Phase 6 that we have dates for, but not actually titles or any official confirmation on what those films are going to be. So what I want to do in today's video is break down my own personal opinion on what I think those 6 projects are going to be, and an idea of exactly what might be happening in them and why they might be coming out in this particular time rather than sooner or later. So kicking off, I am going to start with the project that I believe is most likely to be here in Phase 6, and that's because this is the only project really that has been formally, officially announced, and that is Armor Wars. Now, Armor Wars is of course the new project starring Don Cheadle as War Machine, and this is one that has recently turned from a series on Disney Plus into a full-fledged cinematic release. Now, I do believe that Armor Wars is going to release in Phase 6 for a couple of reasons. For one, like I say, it's one of the only projects that I have on my list that has been officially announced, but also the fact that it has been converted from a series into a film does make me believe that there is some kind of active development going on this project. Maybe not like super active, but you know, there is something going on with this series. Add on top of that all of the kind of stuff and drama we've just dealt with Rhodey and Don Cheadle's character inside a Secret Invasion. I feel like there is a story there with Rhodey that, you know, the reason why his character in particular was chosen to be in Secret Invasion and to have the role that he did was because he was going to be expanded upon even more in a further MCU project. So I do think that one of the major first projects we're going to get in Phase 6 is Don Cheadle's Armor Wars. Next up, I believe Doctor Strange 3 is going to be a big player in Phase 6. Now, there was a big wait between Doctor Strange 1 and Doctor Strange 2, and I don't believe we're going to have that same situation occur again between Doctor Strange 2 and 3. I think that Doctor Strange 3 is going to release in Phase 6, and I think it is going to release before the Kang Dynasty and also Secret Wars. And that's mainly because I feel like the character of Doctor Strange, he's become very influential in the MCU. Ever since he's been introduced, he has been one of those characters that has popped up again and again and again. And he was a big player in both Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. So I do believe that, especially with, you know, him being very much involved in the multiverse stuff going on at the moment, and these 2 upcoming Avengers films being very multiverse focused, I think that it makes sense to have Doctor Strange there. There was also obviously a post-credit scene at the end of Multiverse of Madness, which did set up a potential 3rd film with Doctor Strange having to deal with these incursions and stuff. So I feel like it is all going to tie together, and I feel like Doctor Strange is going to be a key film in the Phase 6 lineup before we get to those 2 big Avengers movies in the finale. Next up, I will chuck in a bit of an obvious one that I feel like is bound to happen in Phase 6, and that is What If Season 3. Now, What If is one of the only Marvel Disney Plus shows to be continuing to get renewed, and I think that Season 3 is bound to land in Phase 6. You know, we got Season 1 in Phase 4, we're getting Season 2 at the end of this year in Phase 5, so it kind of makes sense that in that time we will then get Phase 6, and in Phase 6 we will then get Season 3. It just kind of makes sense. It's a natural progression, unless it doesn't get renewed after Season 2, like maybe Disney aren't happy with the numbers it's producing on Disney Plus, and maybe they'll just choose not to renew it for a 3rd season, but I feel like that's unlikely. At the end of the day, the Marvel stuff is still always big on Disney Plus, and I think with What If, it's one of those shows that you can kind of, you know, you can literally do anything with it, so the possibilities are kind of endless. So I feel like What If Season 3, it's kind of obvious, but I feel like that will be one of those release dates on the Phase 6 slate. And next up, I do believe that this film has been kind of announced, but not like officially announced, and that is the sequel to Shang Chi. I feel like Shang Chi is absolutely bound to get a sequel before these 2 Avengers movies, surely. He's a big new character they've introduced. I personally loved Shang Chi. I think that original film was one of the best of Phase 4. Really strong character introduction. I think Simu Liu has done an incredible job bringing this character to life, and I think his popularity as an actor has increased since the release. He's also been in Barbie recently, which has also done a lot for him. So I feel like that this is just only a matter of time, really. And I know, I think it was around Comic-Con last year, there was that trademark of Shang-Chi and the Wreckage of Time. So that's kind of the speculated sequel as to, like, that's what the name's going to be. It's going to be Shang-Chi and the Wreckage of Time. which does kind of, that title does indicate that there's going to be some kind of time travel or multiverse shenanigans going on in that movie, which again ties into Kang and Secret Wars and all that other good stuff. So I feel like Shang-Chi 2 is pretty much a surefire shot to be one of these movies, especially because there has been hints very strongly ever since the first movie came out that a sequel was in development at Marvel Studios. My only question is Destin Daniel Cretton actually going to be a director on this? Because he was obviously the director of the first movie. We know he's also going on to direct Kang Dynasty, and we also know he's going to be a big player behind the scenes on the Wonder Man TV series, which has currently been delayed indefinitely, so we don't know really when that's coming out, which is why I've not included it here. But I feel like, with Destin being so busy, is he going to have room for a Shang-Chi sequel, especially if he is building up to, doing doing Kang Dynasty? So I feel like that's my big question. Like, I think Shang-Chi 2 will definitely happen. I think it's a surefire Phase 6 film. It's just a case of whether or not it's going to tie in heavily, or is Destin Daniel Cretton actually going to come back to direct it, or is he just going to be simply too busy to do a Shang-Chi sequel? And I guess that does beg the question of, if Destin Daniel Cretton is not able to return for the second film, who would you get to direct it? I personally feel like a good shot would be someone like Gareth Evans, who is the director of the Raid films. I think he's just a tremendous action director who has proven time and time again that he's just a wonderful choice. I personally love Gareth Evans, is one of my all-time favorite directors, so to get him in the MCU and to do something like Shang-Chi, he's just kind of like a perfect fit for that. He knows how to direct martial arts action, and hopefully in the second film, if they kind of dial back on the kind of over-the-top big action that we got in the third act and really focuses on the stuff we got earlier on, and if you get Gareth Evans to handle that, that would be a top-tier MCU film. Now, a little bit more of an out-there suggestion, but I do feel like that there is a possibility this will happen. Moon Knight Season 2. Yeah, I'm not 100% confident on this. I personally really want a Moon Knight Season 2, because while I didn't absolutely love the first season of Moon Knight, I thought it was really cool, and I thought it was really strong, and it has so much potential. I just don't think it really embraced the potential as well as it could have. But I mainly want a Season 2 because, for one, I feel like what they set up at the end of Season 1 with Jake Lockley, I just really want to see that in live action. Like, I think that's really cool. We had Mark Spector and Stephen Grant in the first season, so we just have this third personality just waiting to really come into fruition with Jake Lockley, and they tease that at the end of Season 1, so I really want to see that. But also, I feel like Moon Knight is one of the only characters in the MCU who can't really appear in anything else. Like, Moon Knight as a season was incredibly standalone for the MCU. It didn't really connect to anything. And I feel like with Moon Knight as a character, like, where else can he really show up? Like, I guess you could put him in an Avengers movie, but why would you? Like, he has no ties to the Avengers. He doesn't know any of them. Like, none of them know him. There just really isn't much room for Moon Knight to jump over to, like, the bigger MCU stage. So I feel like, why force that when you can just do a second season of Moon Knight, which I think would just be much better. So I feel like Moon Knight Season 2, I don't think it's a definite, but I feel like out of all the Marvel Disney Plus shows, I feel like Moon Knight is outside of Loki, is kind of like the most viable option to get a second season. And that could mean that we get it in Phase 6. And my last choice on the list, and this is a completely out there choice, which has been speculated. There's no official comment from Marvel Studios, but a lot of people have been speculating this, and I do agree. Midnight Suns. I feel like Midnight Suns, it's just looking a little bit more likely each and every day. With the projects that Marvel has been doing so far and the projects that have still yet to come out, there's a lot of suggestion that they are working on something that is building to the Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns, if you're unaware, is a group in Marvel Comics who kind of deal with the darker side of the Marvel Universe, kind of the more mystical, magical side of things. And I feel like there's so many characters that they've introduced who are famously members of the Midnight Suns in the comics. It just kind of makes sense. Marvel don't do this sort of thing by accident. They always have a plan and they have things going on. And I feel like that this isn't unintentional, with the introduction of characters like Blade, who obviously we've not seen Blade yet, but he is going to be coming sometime soon. Dane Whitman, who's going to be from Eternals, who's going to become the Black Knight, likely going to be in Blade. Moon Knight, Werewolf by Night. You've also obviously got Doctor Strange as well. And there has been some speculation about a Ghost Rider limited series or a Ghost Rider special presentation coming to Disney+. Like, there's lots of different little elements here and there throughout the MCU that do hint towards a Midnight Sun series. So I feel like there is a potential here for this, whether it's a movie or a series, I'm not sure. I think maybe a series might be better for Midnight Suns. But yeah, there's no real confirmation on this, and I'm certainly not the first person to bring this up, but I feel like Midnight Suns, it's just looking more likely. And I feel like that one of these slots in Phase 6, kind of like a cool little, kind of like how we're getting Thunderbolts in Phase 5, I think Midnight Suns could be a cool little mini team-up that we get in Phase 6 before we get the big, huge Avengers movies. And a couple of honorable mentions as well, just before we wrap up the video. I think Spider-Man 4 is obviously bound to come out in this phase, but Spider-Man 4 isn't included on this because that's obviously a Sony movie, and it's up to Sony to release that and announce when it's coming out. Like, Marvel can't really put that on their slate until Sony officially announces it, so Spider-Man 4 is almost like, a definite, consider it done deal sort of thing. We know they're working on it. Tom Holland has said they're working on it. Amy Pascal has spoken about it. So we know Spider-Man 4 is happening, and it's bound to come out. I made a video on Spider-Man 4 a couple of days ago. That movie's bound to come out here. It's just not officially on, the MCU Disney Marvel Studios slate because they can't. And the other one, which I nearly swapped out for one of the other choices on this list, was Eternals 2. Eternals obviously was one of Marvel's biggest flops. It didn't do well. People didn't really like it that much, and the characters just didn't really connect with people. But there has been rumors and theories behind the scenes that there is a sequel to Eternals in development. I put it on honorable mention just because I don't believe it will happen. I feel like Eternals is kind of one of those projects that Marvel's going to very quietly sort of move away from and try and get rid of those characters just because it was a flop. I feel like that movie came out, didn't do very well, and people were initially oh well, COVID and this, that, and the other. But then a month later, they released Spider-Man No Way Home, and that movie made $1 billion and became one of the biggest movies of all time. So really, in a month's difference, COVID, the world hadn't changed that much. So I feel like even Marvel looked at Eternals and went, yeah, people didn't care about this. So Eternals 2, it might happen, but I personally don't really see it happening. The only thing they could really potentially do is follow up on the post-credit scene, where they introduced Harry Styles. They could do something with him just because it's Harry Styles. But even then, Harry Styles hasn't really done that well as an actor. Don't Worry Darling didn't perform particularly well, and he was obviously the big marketing push in that. So, I don't know. Eternals 2, I feel like there is a 20 to 30% chance of that movie happening, but I put it on honorable mentions just because I don't really see it myself. So there you have it, guys. There's my thoughts on Marvel Phase 6 and the missing movies from the slate. Make sure you leave your own choices in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my choices, or do you have your own list? Leave them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to see more comic book movie content just like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.